You are told you won't see the sunrise. You are told you won't live throughout the night. Time for some grit. Let's hear from Ron Stollar next.
This is A Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things. Now, podcasting from Spire to leaders in local communities like yours, here is Brian Leflock.
And let's get cooking. I am really excited about this show today because I have a place in my heart for people who do things for other people and people who give of themselves, put themselves in harm's way, put themselves in society's way to make a difference for others. I'm speaking specifically of law enforcement and first responders. I'm also speaking specifically about our guest today on Dash of Grit. I'd like to introduce you to a very special person doing great things at the Medina County Juvenile Detention Center and has done many things over his career as an 18-year veteran of the Medina Police Department. You are going to be thankful that you stayed around and listened to the story with Ron Stollar. Ron, welcome to A Dash of Grit.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And thank you for your kind words.
Well, we don't get to say it enough. And too often, at the fast food restaurant, we say, boy, I ought to say something to that young man over there, that military person or that law enforcement, or I ought to buy coffee. And sometimes we do, but never do you folks get the credit or recognition that you deserve. I think it's impossible to. You put yourself out there way too much.
That could be, but I think most of us are okay with that as well because we love what we do.
Yeah, I believe that too. And so, Ron, I want to get to your story because I know that the grit that you've showed over the years makes it possible to impact lives today like you probably didn't even see yourself being able to impact lives and your team. And so those lives are of young people, students, people in the juvenile detention center who, well, we'll talk about what they could get into and what their lives could look like, but maybe aren't now. And it's thanks to the grit that you've shown over time in your team. But if you can tell me a little bit about your program and the things that are going well and success with your program at the detention center, what's working really well? Let's brag about that a little bit because that matters, the difference you're making to kids and young people today. Let's talk about that before we get into your story of grit.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think, hopefully we have many things that are going well, but one of the first things that comes to mind is, and this is nothing profound, but it's just the way we work with our kids to help get them on the right track. That's the bottom line. I have a philosophy of I have no interest in simply just housing kids. About anybody could do that. Since they're here, why would we not do everything we can reasonably do to help them and in many cases, their families get on the right track, get their lives turned around. So we do a number of different things, but one of them, again, not profound, we treat them with respect, dignity. We listen to them, their stories. We encourage them. We have services both through us after they leave us, as well as more so our juvenile court.
And it's not just, we're not going to talk bad about anybody, but I've talked to you about this a little bit before. You feel like you're making an effort that maybe not everyone is making, that when you have this time with these folks, that you can impact them in order to make them better contributors to society in the future. And it was surprising to me that that's just not the way it is everywhere. In some places, it's just a holding cell, right?
Sadly, that's accurate in probably too many cases. The old adage, the youth are our future, also happens to be absolutely true.
Yeah.
They are. So again, why would we not try to help them? They're already in our communities. They're going to continue to grow, be in our communities and beyond. I don't want to be at a park or a store somewhere and have a problem with someone that we spent absolutely no time trying to improve. I would rather have a conversation with folks that they come up, they're cordial, they're personable. You say hi, they might thank you, which still happens to me from people I used to arrest when I was on the police department. Actually, it just happened Sunday, 2 days ago.
Yeah. Somebody came up to you and said, thank you for impacting my life. You might not even remember me, but you made this difference for me.
Correct. I did remember him. I had arrested him several times as it turns out, but I always liked him. We always had a good relationship.
Yeah. Tough love is what that's called. And you wouldn't just let him go. I'm interested. This is kind of a gritty question, but it's not about you so much. The program, since you're doing it differently than other people, have you gotten some pushback that, let's not go all the way out here. They don't deserve all of our efforts thing. Let's just status quo. Does that ever happen?
It's happened a couple of times that I'm aware of. I'm guessing that we've had people think it and not necessarily verbalize it. But the superintendent of another juvenile detention center here in Ohio, because we send out a monthly newsletter about what's going on in our building, and he receives it. More than 500 people, I think, receive that. He told me last year sometime to stop sending him jokingly. He said, please stop sending me your newsletter. You make us look just incompetent because we don't do half the stuff you do there.
Yeah.
It was encouraging.
Yeah. Encouraging and more of opportunity of being able to impact others. How long have you been at the detention center?
It'll be 16 years here in December.
And how long did it take you in that 16 years to realize that the way everyone does it, this storage cell biding our time mentality has to go away? How long did that take you to kind of turn that around a little bit?
Well, I'm probably embarrassed to admit it took me a few years, actually. I didn't have a background at all in corrections or detention, especially with juveniles. And when I started here, I thought, well, okay, this is what corrections is. It's how it's done. But as time went on, I just kept thinking, I think we can do better.
Yeah.
And so over time, just started trying to make things happen.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about grit when things weren't going as well, because you've transformed. And I give you credit and your team credit for transforming the way this is done at the Juvenile Detention Center at Medina. And so let's talk about you. Let's talk about your history. Let's talk about grit that through tough times has brought you to this position to be able to make this impact. Can you share your story a little bit with us? Because I know it is encouraging and should energize people to get up and make a difference.
I'll do my best here.
I know you will. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was a sergeant with the Medina Police Department. I was on the SWAT team and did a lot of work out in the community. I was in charge of several officers whose assignments were to reduce crime in the highest crime areas of the city. And as it turns out, we were very successful. And so during my 14th year, my family and I were returning from a family vacation. So I was off duty, of course, and we were hit head on by a drunk driver going the wrong way on an interstate in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And I probably don't have time to get into the details of how we were not able to avoid this car coming at us, but it was not avoidable. And my wife is an excellent driver. She was driving, actually, and if she couldn't avoid it, nobody could. So it happened, and I ended up with a lot of injuries, life-threatening injuries, and was told that I would probably not survive through the night. But obviously and thankfully, I did. By the grace of God, I'm here today. So that changed things very quickly for me.
And Ron, you were an 18-year veteran of the police force, and all of a sudden, there's a wall, and you have to make some choices. So you recover, and we won't talk about the recovery unless you would like to, but I'm sure that wasn't easy, especially from a life-threatening, you couldn't make it through the night. When you felt like that you were recovered, what happens to a 18-year police veteran when they realize that story is closed?
Well, okay, let me interject here.
Okay.
When the doctor told me that he did not expect I would live to see the sunrise.
He told you? So you were, oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, yes, he did. He did it very professionally. I'm paraphrasing here. But I told myself, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, which was nothing other than mental due to my injuries. I couldn't do anything physically. But I told myself, I am not going to allow myself to fall asleep. I am going to stay awake somehow, one way or another, to see the sunrise. And, again, that happened because we know that because I'm here today. And then that next afternoon, a nurse came into my room and she said, the ER doctor from the night before that had taken care of me had called in that afternoon because he was not going to be on duty that night, and asked her how long I had survived. And she said, he's still with us. And the doctor said, are you sure? No one survives those types of injuries. And she said, well, I'm quite sure. He's got a room here. So that, when she shared that with me, that I think is when it really hit me that, okay, wow, yeah, the doctor did say you might not live through the night, but for him to call in and pose the question the way he did, how long did I live, essentially, I thought, okay, this is pretty bad. I didn't realize how bad it was. Still, even at that time, I thought I'd be off work for a couple of weeks. That's how ignorant I was. As it turned out, I was off work for 11 months with surgeries and tests and physical therapy and all those types of things before I was cleared to go back to work. When I was finally cleared to go back to work, it was only for light duty. I had physical limitations and chronic pain, and I couldn't do things that some things that a police officer has to do, like run after people when they decide they're going to run from you, or shoot shotguns, things like that, and just fight with people when they resist arrest.
Right.
So when I finally got cleared, I went back to work, but I was put in charge of our dispatch center. The person who had been in charge of it during that 11 months I was off had retired, and now Mayor Dennis Hanwell, then Chief Dennis Hanwell, told me if I wanted that position, he would hold it open for me, and he did. And so I went back to work and was in charge of dispatch for a couple of years before leaving and coming here to the detention center.
And so, Ron, I'm doing a terrible job of host because I'm bouncing us all around, but I want to go back, if you don't mind, to that sunrise. I want to go back to that sunrise. Okay. The sunrise you weren't supposed to see. I can't get it out of my mind. What was that like when you saw that sunrise? Did you wonder if you'd see another, or did you feel like, okay, I've done this, I'm going to be okay? Like, what was that sunrise like for you?
Okay, yeah. Boy, no one's ever asked me that question before, but it was a beautiful sunny morning.
Wow.
In June, this was 2002, and I could see, the light across the room outside getting lighter and brighter. And I still was not out of the woods yet, because that had only been just a few hours after the doctor had told me that. I still had, essentially what it came down to was there was about a 12-hour window. He said, if you live past 12 hours, you will live.
Oh.
Said, but there's a high probability that your heart is not, it will stop before that 12 hours and we can't do anything about it. So I'm just watching through the window, it getting lighter and brighter. And remember looking at the clock, and after it passed that 12th hour, I thought, okay, I think I'm going to make it. I think I'll be okay here. And then I finally fell asleep.
And then you finally fell asleep.
Yes.
Did you have any words for the doctor? I mean, he's just doing his job, but was there any quips that were like, hey, look at me, I'm here?
I regret that I never did that. I did try to follow up years later, and he had retired, and I was not able to track him down. So, one of my regrets in that, for sure.
How hard was it to stay awake? How hard was it during that 12 hours to stay dedicated and motivated? What was that 12 hours like for you? That's grit, buddy. That is grit.
Well, it was difficult. On one hand, it was really difficult because I was heavily medicated with morphine and some other drugs, which wanted me to to go to sleep, just the power of the drug. At the same time, I was in such pain, even with the morphine, that the pain also helped keep me awake. I was acutely aware of every breath I took, and the way I've termed it before is, breathing for all of us is an involuntary action. We don't give a thought at all. We just do it. But for several days, even under pain medication, I was aware of every breath. And for me, it was more voluntary in a way, because it's like, I don't want to inhale again. I don't want to exhale again because it's too painful. So I would hold my breath for as long as I could, and then inhale and exhale as shallowly as I could, because it was just slightly less painful than a normal breath. So that's how I dealt with making it through the night and staying awake.
Well, I'm glad you did. And I've never had to fight for my life. And I congratulate you on the grit that you showed to make it through, because you're there for your family. You're there for your community, and you're now impacting others because of that 12-hour fight. And so it's more than just your next breath. You're impacting the world. And I think that's what happens with police officers and first responders. They want to make a difference. They want to make the next day better for the people they serve or the people they interact with. And so tell me now, let's jump then ahead again. You're no longer able to do the things that you wanted to do in the police department, and you found this opportunity. What's going through your mind there? You're not ready for a shift. You're not ready for retirement. You've fought and shown this grit to get here. And now you're in a brand new spot that you kind of didn't really ask for in the first place. What kind of things are you thinking about now, and how's that making you feel?
Well, I loved doing what I did as a police officer for Medina PD. I loved every minute of it. I never had a bad day my entire tenure there. And so when things changed, as they did for me, I had to adjust to always being on station. I loved responding to calls and helping people. And while I had no complaints being in charge of dispatch, as time went on, I'm hearing the radio traffic officers responding and to things that are going on, and then they'll come on station and they'll talk about them. And I'm thinking, man, I would have loved to have been on that call. I would have done this maybe this way or whatever. And so again, after a couple of years of doing that, the then juvenile court judge, John Lone, who I knew very well, called me and told me that the assistant superintendent position was open here at the detention center, and would I be interested? And I told him I would not. I still was happy at the police department, but he called me once a month for the next 8 months and asked me to consider it. And over that 8 months, I somehow, and I can't explain it, I think God wants me to leave the police department and go to the detention center. But I don't know why, because I don't care to work with kids, especially troubled youth. I'm being honest. But finally, with that prodding that I was feeling, and just again, the officers are coming in and they're talking about things they're doing out there, and I missed it. I finally relented, and I told Judge Lone, "All right, I'll take the position." And so that's how I ended up here.
With what expectations and what trepidations? Because it's interesting. God wants you to be there. I heard that they didn't fill the position for 8 months while they kept asking you, and yet you didn't really have that's the way God's plans work. He says, go here. No, and finally you go, and it works out. Did you have expectations? Did you expect to fail? Did you expect to do great? Did you expect to make change? What were you just hoping to do in those first few years or so on the new job?
I wish I had a better answer for you than this, but what I was expecting was simply to enjoy whatever I was going to end up doing here, to enjoy it as much as I did at the police department. I had a lot to learn, but I have to give credit to the employees here. When I came here, I met with each of them individually. I told them, I don't know what I'm doing here. It would be foolish of me to pretend that I do. And they were 100% supportive and helped me a lot. So a lot of the credit goes to them. So again, a lot to learn, but I love to learn. So that's not an issue for me. It seems to have worked out. I hope. I'm still here.
Well, let's talk about that. And so the one of the great ways to be a great leader is to have a great team, right? If they can lead themselves and do their own thing while you provide the direction and things, then that allows you to think big picture and make real things, real change, and real opportunities happen. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about grit, the hard times, the struggles to get over you changed this program. And we've already talked about the fact that you've changed this program in a way that others still aren't necessarily willing to do. What were some of the hurdles and hardships and almost seemingly failures, walls that you ran into in trying to change this program?
The biggest hurdle was, I've used this terminology before. I call the environment here, when I started here, a consequence-based environment. We have rules. The kids break those rules. They have consequences, and of course, negative consequences. And as I said earlier, I just kept thinking, I think we can do better than this. So knowing, believing that positive reinforcement is such a powerful motivator to change behavior for good, I decided we were going to put together a behavioral level system with incentives and rewards, and kids could earn these rewards through their good behavior. So, having said that, I knew my biggest, most difficult hurdle would be the staff, because the culture here was just so ingrained. This is the way it is.
Sure. Yep.
And when we finally ended up implementing it, it sure surprised me. The change in the behavior of the kids improved almost overnight. That might sound like an exaggeration, but I gotta tell you, it wasn't. And people who, from the outside of our building, who come in, whether they're contract service providers or volunteers who come in weekly or monthly, whatever, they were making it a point to stop by my office or call me or email me and tell me, wow, what an improvement in the kids' behavior. So that was really encouraging.
And so treating these kids like human beings and treating them like solid employees and setting expectations and rewards and opportunities. Let me push back a little bit, because there are people listening now that are going, hey man, they made their own bed. This is jail. Why are we being soft? Why are we, dangling carrots on sticks? What does behavior matter? Shouldn't these kids just do their time? Why are we being so soft? Now, I don't feel that way, of course, Ron, but I know that people think that. How do you respond to that?
I'll go back to something I said a few minutes ago. These kids are our future. So it makes no sense to me to just let them sit in a cell and not try to get their lives turned around. Yeah. So between us and our court, again, we do everything we can reasonably do to change their behavior. And when I guess most of the time, get a card or a letter from a former youth who was here, and often they're years later saying, thank you for this, thank you for that. I'm married now, I have kids, I went to college or the military, whatever the case may be, that continues to encourage us. I share those with our staff. So when it comes down to it, when you get to know these kids, to hopefully more specifically answer your question, most of them would never be in a building such as ours if not for their home lives.
Yeah.
The breakdown of the family, parents who have their own maybe addictions at times and issues, Maybe their parents are in and out of jail or prison. Most of the kids here have a lot of potential, and most of them truly are not bad kids. They're making terrible decisions in most cases. A lot of them are really very cool. It's not uncommon for staff to say, "Oh, I would love to take this one home. I'd love to take that one home," because they would be a completely different person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know your heart for folks, and I know that God doesn't make junk. And so you're able to see through the fact that these are good people that have run across hard times, perhaps made poor decisions. A second chance is not out of the realm of what you're trying to provide these kids.
Nor a third or fourth or fifth chance.
Well said.
Oftentimes.
Well said. So I know you're not done. I know your heart. I know that it's not good enough yet, and you're going to keep trying to work on things. What needs to happen in the future? What hurdles are coming that you can see? What opportunities are you going to try to take advantage of? Where will the grit come next as you try to improve this program even more?
Okay. Well, there are folks in our country who don't think that buildings such as ours should even exist.
Oh.
That kids, minors, should not be locked up for any reason. And there's a push for that around the country. It's still more isolated than prevalent, but it's growing. And what I have responded to people who have shared that belief with me is, do we want anyone in jail? Hopefully not. That said, some people are dangerous, even younger folks, sometimes minors. They're either a danger to themselves and or the community. While they're with us, they are well cared for. They're not staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning. They don't have a cell phone to do whatever they want to do with. They are not around, at least hanging out with other kids that they would outside the building, their friends who might continue to influence them in the wrong direction. They're actually eating 3 meals a day. They're brushing their teeth 3 times a day. I could go on. They're well cared for here, which is not the case most of the time when they're at home.
Yeah.
So it's actually beneficial for most of them to be here. And we have a lot of services that we provide, both internally and externally, to help the kids.
Ron, I wonder what you learned as a police officer, and this will be my final question before we start to wrap things up. What you learned in your 18 years as a police officer, specifically, that carried on to this. As a police officer, you react, you respond, you take care of emergencies. Quite often, that's what you're forced to do. And now you're implementing change and positive and new opportunities and growth. What did you learn from your career as a police officer that has allowed you to do these things today through the grit that you've shown?
I think the biggest thing for me was, I enjoy helping people. So as a police officer, when I would help people, here was a challenge. This was a personal challenge for me. Whether it was one person, 2 parties, multiple parties, my personal challenge was, when I leave this scene, this situation, this problem, I want to leave with everyone here thinking they won, that life is back to normal as much as it can be for them, or life is good, life might be even better. Now, that realistically isn't always the case, but I really learned through the years how much I enjoyed people being able to, I guess, change themselves in many cases just through the efforts of not only myself, but coworkers and others. And so when you see that, for me, it's personally satisfying, and that just carries over with the kids here.
Yeah. So you've changed culture, and that's what so many different businesses have trouble with doing, and trying to hire and trying to keep employees and keep people happy and things. And so you've taken it to a whole new level, and for a group of people that wouldn't have gotten that care before. And so you've really made an impact, and I thank you for that. In case there are folks that want to know more about your program, or even just you as an individual, because you are inspiring, in case anyone wanted to reach out to you, how might they do that? Is there an easy way in case they would?
The best way is probably email. And just go to our website from an email address. And we also, as I mentioned, have a monthly electronic newsletter that they can request that we'll send to them. We have a Facebook page, so they can see what's going on.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I'm going to wrap up with you in a second. A quick word about Spire Marketing. We are the type of marketing organization that tries to help you tell your story. You just heard Ron's story and the story of a great future for many. If you have a story like that in your business and you're trying to get it across so that other people understand what you're trying to do to impact others and to improve your business and improve your community, let us help. You can reach out to me. I'm Brian. You can find me at brian@spiread.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can catch me here on Dash of Grit once a week. Ron, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your vulnerability. You shared a story of fighting for your breath, and that is a personal one. And I thank you for sharing it. I know that's not easy to do, but people will be inspired by that because we all say things happen for a reason. I hope that a head-on crash wasn't for a reason, but you have turned that into something amazing and special for many, many people. And I appreciate the grit that you showed, and I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you again. You're very kind with your comments. I appreciate that, and that's encouraging. And I hope others are encouraged as well.
Ron Stollar, Medina County Juvenile Detention Center Superintendent. I'm glad you're there, Ron. I know the kids are glad you're there, and the world is better for it. And I appreciate your time spent with us on Dash of Grit. This is Dash of Grit, and you can listen to us once a week. We have new episodes with great leaders like Ron and others. You can find past episodes on the Dash of Grit website, and you can also listen to us anywhere you find your podcast. The recipe for success always includes a dash of grit. So make sure you add yours. Be gritty, and we'll see you next time.
This is a Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things.